Hello, this is chapter 1, video number 2. In this video, we are going to be talking about populations and samples, along with the difference between observational studies and experiments. So let's go ahead and get started. So the entire purpose of statistics is to gather information about a population. However, a lot of times it is not feasible to ask every single person in a population their thoughts on something or to experiment on every single person in a population. So we rely on sampling methods. So for instance, let's say that we are looking at all of college students. We are trying to figure out all of college students and their thoughts on financial aid. Now, it would be very impractical to ask every single college student in the United States about their thoughts on financial aid. So we could rely on a sample instead of asking everybody their opinions, we could just ask a few random people. Now, if we are calculating these statistics on a population, that statistic would be considered a parameter. All right, so let's say we wanted to know the average GPA of college students. Well, if I calculated every single GPA of every single student and calculated the average GPA, that would be considered a parameter. However, that is fairly impossible to gather data on every single college student. So let's say we wanted to know the average or typical GPA of a college student. We could rely on a sample and calculate a statistic. So a parameter would be the overall mean GPA of the whole population if we were able to calculate that. However, a statistic would simply be, hey, what is that calculation based off of our sample? All right, so a few different ways we can draw conclusions about a population is we can conduct an observational study. And in an observational studies, researchers simply observe. They do not manipulate the subjects in any way. So a good example of an observational study would simply be a survey. If you're just asking people for a survey on their college experience, you're not manipulating their college experience in any way. You are simply asking for their opinion on it. That is an observational study. Same thing, let's say that we are looking at a new prescription drug, but instead of assigning certain people to get it, if you were just gathering information from your patients, let's say a doctor is just asking their patients certain questions and saying, oh, how is this affecting you? How is this affecting your everyday? That would be considered an observational study. They're not manipulating it in any way. They're simply observing the effects of that. Now, an experiment is different. In an experiment, researchers are actively manipulating treatments. So for example, let's go back to that prescription drug. Let's say that a researcher wants to investigate the efficacy of a new prescription drug. Well, we could have one group of people get the prescription drug. We could have another group randomly assigned to get a different prescription drug. And then finally, a third group could get a placebo for a control group. So with an experiment, researchers are actively manipulating treatments. So back to our college example. Let's say that a college is looking for whether the time of day a course is, if that affects student performance. So we could have one course of statistics. All of the students in that course take it at 8 a.m., whereas another group takes it at noon and another group takes it at 5 in the evening. And then the grades are analyzed. Well, that would be considered an experiment because a researcher is putting them into different treatments. So with this, you have different treatment groups. Typically, there is a control group of some method or in some manner, and then you were looking to see how those treatments affect the subjects. All right, so quick review. Population is your overall population you're looking to gather information about. If we were able to calculate things about the population, that would be considered a parameter. However, it's very unlikely that we actually can gather information from an entire population, so we rely on a sample and calculate a statistic. Two different ways we can investigate. We have observational studies where researchers simply observe, they do not manipulate the subjects in any way. And then finally, we also have experiments where the researchers are actively manipulating treatments. That is it for video number 2.